Okay, good morning once again. We are here to continue with our lessons on YouTube. We are still on our broader topic, human resource management. Several aspects have been done. The last time we met, we talked about collective bargaining. We look at the meaning and then the advantages of collective bargaining. Today, we are going to look at another subtopic. The workplace is full of disputes. Often you hear of strike actions and so on and so forth. So this morning we'll be looking at labor disputes and then their settlement procedure. Labor disputes and their settlement procedure. That is what we are looking at this morning. So by the end of this lesson, you should be able to define labor dispute. When you say collective industrial dispute, what is it? Then we also look at some of the ways of settling disputes or resolving disputes in organizations. Now, when you talk about dispute, what are we talking about? Certainly, it means there is disagreement between one party and then another, or between somebody and another person. You see, when we are talking about the collective bargain or collective agreement, especially when we were dealing with conditions of service, the Ghana Education Service condition of service that I showed you, that one was captioned collective agreement. And we have learned that when you say collective agreement, then it means decisions in respect of that document were not taken by one party, but both parties. So in the case of Ghana Education Service, we saw that the employer, that is GES, and then the members of or the leadership of the various associations, NAGRAT, NAT, CCT, and so on and so forth, met and then they brought that document. You see, what happens is that when one of the parties, especially the employer, breaches the collective agreement, and you have done law of contract. So when you say breaches the collective agreement, you understand what is meant by when one party breaches an agreement. You have resolved, that is what you are going to do. You are going to pay A and B allowances to the workers. You have resolved that you are going to do C for the workers. Both parties came together. So if the employer refuses or fails to implement the decisions that were taken in respect of the collective agreement, then dispute will certainly come in. So if you are looking at collective industrial dispute, then we are looking at disagreement between the employer and their employees, or the employer and then the unions. And when I talk about unions, we have a lot of them. We shall be looking at that one, but you are familiar with UTAG, NAGRAT, and so on and so forth. So that is what the dispute is all about. That is what conflict is about, is when there is disagreement between the parties. So that is that. And we have also looked at how it occurs. We said when one of the parties breaches the collective agreement, then that is what happened. So now there is dispute. How do you resolve the dispute? So we are going to look at the methods of resolving disputes in organization. You remember when we were talking about companies, we started with partnership. We look at an act. We look at the Incorporated Private Partnership Act 1962, Act 152. When we were also talking about companies, we said we also looked at the Companies Code 1963 at 179, and we learned that that act had been amended. So now we have the Companies Act 2019 at 992. You see, all these documents that we learned, and when we're even looking at the cooperative society, we also look at another act. So you see, organizations are governed by acts. societies are governed by laws and so forth. When you come to employment, you see we have done employment law. So we you know, or you are familiar with the Labor Act 2003. You are familiar with that one. Now, Labor Act 2003 stipulates three methods of resolving conflicts. So if there is any conflict, then the act, if you have the act with you right now, or if you go to you Google and then you get the Labor Act, you go to section 153, section 154, and so on, you see the what the act says in respect of how disputes should be settled. So when you go to section 153 of the act, or let me give you the overview. In general, there are three main ways or methods of resolving conflicts in organization according to the Labor Act. The first one, I didn't say one of them, the first one, because you need to follow that procedure. So when there's conflict, you start with negotiation. If negotiation fails, then you come to another one called conciliation or mediation. If that one fails, then you move to the last stage, which is arbitration. So let's look at them in brief. When you say negotiation, it means that the two parties, the parties in conflict, in this case, it could be the employer and then the employee. And remember, employees are represented by their union. So we have the leadership of the association. So they meet the employer. So there is conflict. You are supposed to implement, for example, when we are looking at the Ghana Education Service collective agreement, we learned that a lot of things were in. But you see, the problem has got to do with the implementation. So if teachers, for example, teachers, for example, realize that they are supposed to receive rent allowance as it is stipulated in the collective agreement, but that is not being paid. They are supposed to get this and that allowance. If you go to a deprived area, you are supposed to get this benefit and so forth. If they are not receiving those benefits, then there will be conflict. And when that conflict happens, then the Labor Act says the first thing is to negotiate. And what is that one? It means that the parties themselves, in this case, Ghana Education Service, and then the teacher union should sit down and then try to resolve the issue themselves without a third party. So in negotiation, there is no third party. When I talk about third party, when we are looking at law of contract, we learned about who a third party is, so you know. So the two parties would have to resolve the conflict. Each one will try as much as possible for the other one to understand their views in respect of the resolution of the conflict. That is what negotiation is all about. So when there is any conflict, you start with negotiation. But if negotiation fails, then within 7 days, in respect of the occurrence of the conflict, you need to see the National Labour Commission. When you go there, that you try as much as possible to resolve the conflict through negotiation, but you were not able to do that, then they will get a third party for you. Either you yourself decide who the third party should be, or they can do that for you. So, and the third party is called the mediator. And when you say somebody is a mediator, if you say Jesus is the mediator between God and man, what does that mean? If you say you are the mediator between A and B, what does that mean? So the mediator will now come and then help the parties to settle the dispute or the conflict. And how, you see, he is not the one going to take decision for them. If you are familiar with counseling, a counselor does not take decision for anybody. The counselor gives you information. The onus is on you to take your own decision. So that is in essence what the mediator does. You see, the mediator knows the labor law. The mediator can now, if you are not able to define certain things, he will help you in defining certain issues. and he will come in, he facilitates the settlement procedure. In other words, if we were in a science class, we would have said he serves as a catalyst to facilitate the process of resolving the conflict. But he himself will not be the one to take decision for you. The onus is on the two parties to take their own decision. And when you go to section 154 of the Labor Act, that is what it talks about. It talks about conciliation or mediation. And the one who was appointed or is appointed to mediate is called the mediator. Now, if you're able to resolve the conflict through mediation, then that ends it. But if you are not able to resolve the conflict through mediation, then you move to the last stage, and that will be the arbitration. So you report to the Labor Commission, that is the National Labor Commission, and you inform them that the conflict has still not been resolved. So they will get you another third party. This time, the person is not called mediator. This person is now arbitrator. Now, the difference between the arbitration and then the mediation is that in respect of the mediation, you see, we learned that it's the parties themselves who try as much as possible to resolve the conflict. And then the mediator is there to serve as a catalyst or to facilitate the conflict resolution process, so that you'll be able to, so that if you don't understand anything, he can interpret certain things to you. You know, law is said that your interpretation may be different from another person, but there is what it is. So that is why when you have an issue, you move to one court, from a lower court, then you move to a higher court. People go to the Supreme Court for the court to interpret certain things to them. So the person has learned the Labor Act, the labor law. So he will be able to, if you are saying something, say, no, that is not how it is. It means it should be this and that and that. You agree, then that's all. But for the arbitration, if you are not able to resolve the conflict yourself, then the arbitrator will now take decisions for you. That is the difference. That's the difference. He will take decision for you, and the decision will be final. It will be binding on the two parties. So that is what the Labor Act says in respect of conflict resolution. When there is any conflict in the workplace, there is a way it should be done. Now, in respect of the negotiation, you know, when we are talking about conditions of service, we look at the collective agreement, especially that of Ghana Education Service talks about that one. There is a procedure. One of the content is that there is a procedure, the way to resolve conflict. So if you are negotiating, then you do that in respect of the collective agreement. What does the collective agreement say in respect of resolving conflict? So you need to follow that procedure. So that is that. Now, apart from these three, there are other ways we can also resolve conflict. You can do that through what we call resolution, through dialogue. You can also do that by if the one party is on strike, for example, the employee, they can voluntarily withdraw from the strike actions, and so on and so forth. So that brings us to the end of this morning's lesson. This morning we were looking at industrial disputes and then conflict resolution procedure, and we have talked about what collective industrial dispute is and then how you can resolve conflict. We talk about negotiation, we talk about mediation, we talked about arbitration. Remember, you move from one stage to another. Then we said there are other ways you can also end strike action. That's the methods of resolving conflict. We can look at resolution, dialogue. You can also compromise. Then government can also intervene. So government intervention, and then the party that is the one on strike can also decide to withdraw. You can find out what all these terms mean. Till we meet again another time to continue with our lessons on human resource management, where we'll be looking at morale. Have a nice day. But remember, as you watch the video, you must also study your books. You must study your books. So take note of that. We'll meet tomorrow. Bye bye.